even though you didn't know how to properly serve your body, you were eating junk food as a kid and you had extra weight, the weight was sure it was there, but your body was just so desperately wanting for you to understand what a beautiful partnership it wants to be for you and to come into alignment with what it needs so it can serve you best. And here I was 37 days sober, starting sober living. And I reflect on my suicide attempt and I said, man, I literally tried to end my life and my body said, no.
Yeah! What's up, everybody? Your life alchemist, your dragon. Welcome to Alchemize Life. I'm your host, Justin David Carl. This is a show where I seek out and share expertise, wisdom, and thought leadership in all domains with the mission of empowering and inspiring you to proactively design and truly live a life worth living. We're all in this together, and when we do the work together, we go so much farther, so much faster, and have so much more fun. Without further ado, let's dig into this episode and alchemize life. Adam Sudd,
Hey,
my friend,
brother.
welcome to the show. So good to
so
have you
happy.
here.
So happy to be here. This is gonna be great. You and I have connected, I don't know, like a year ago, I want to say, something like that. And from the get-go, it was just like mutual appreciation, mutual respect, shared vision, shared passion, shared history. And so just excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. In my own kind of well-being journey, I, first discovered you through another podcast, our mutual friend Nimai, his podcast, and so many things that you said resonated so deeply with me that I couldn't help but like reach out and try to connect with you. And fortunately, you graced me with your connection. And, you really have brought so much to me personally in my own well-being journey. And to be able to share your story on this podcast is, such a privilege. So I just want to take a quick moment to give you some deep gratitude, some love, and just, man, I'm so thankful. So
I appreciate you so much. Thank
thank
you, man. That means a lot. Really does.
Awesome. Cool. Well, to kind of kick things off, I would love to really just start with your kind of origin
Yeah.
story when it comes to your well-being journey. So, I'd love for you to kind of walk me through that. And yeah, so take it away, Adam.
I grew up in Texas, and in fact, I'm a seventh generation Texan. I happen to be a Jew, so I grew up eating burgers and barbecue and bagels and blintzes, right? And I say this every time. I think that if you could name my diet growing up, it was the standard American diet wearing cowboy boots with chutzpah. That's what it looked like. And so it was anything, it was the furthest thing from, a plant-focused diet. And look, here's the thing. I'm born in 1982, grew up during the greatest era of unregulated junk food that has ever existed in human history, in my opinion. The sugary cereal, like, boom, and the marketing boom around sugary snacks and high fat snacks, and Nickelodeon that was pushing all these, really unhealthy foods to kids and marketing it, movies like Batman and all those stuff. It was just all, then you had the Batman cereal, then you had, and so I grew up very much sort of immersed in, I want to try the next cool breakfast cereal, the next cool snack, the fruit by the foot, all this stuff. And at the same time, I was growing up in a family that very much valued healthy eating. And my dad had already experienced trauma of losing his father. When my dad was 25 years old, his father died from colon cancer. And from my understanding, because my dad really hasn't shared a lot about the point of diagnosis to the point of death of his dad. And from what I do understand is it was very fast. And so there was a lot of trauma revolving around health and loss of people that matter to my dad. And this is my opinion, right? That I believe that my dad, as a result of that, developed a fear of losing people he loves. to things he cannot control. And so when my dad would see me engaging in eating foods that were knowingly unhealthy, knowingly destructive to my health, my dad became fearful and then hypercritical, right? Criticism is easier to access and opening up and being vulnerable. And I began to believe by age 10 that there was something wrong with me, that I don't know why, but I couldn't stop wanting to eat these foods that were in our house. I couldn't meet the standard of moderation required by my dad to be acceptable. And so I remember being about 10 years old and getting criticized for being overweight and not understanding, that there were conditions upon which I was allowed to love myself or not. Before that moment, I was fully accepting of my body and myself physically and emotionally without judgment, without question. And then boom, all of a sudden there was a condition put upon myself that said, unless you are this, you do not get to completely accept yourself. I want to be very clear. That's not at all what my dad said. That's what I heard. Mm-hmm. And when I heard this, it also opened this can of worms, so to speak, because all of a sudden, hey, if there's one condition I don't know about that I have to meet in order to be acceptable to other people and to myself, well, what are the others and why don't I know what they are? And I became very hyper vigilant, very hyper aware of cues from other people and from the world that were saying, okay, here's another one you didn't know about. You don't meet this condition. You better do something about it. And I started to closet eat. I started to hide away from the world in regards to food and my body. I started, I was the kid that wore a t-shirt in the swimming pool because I was so ashamed. And I was afraid that people I would get a cue that said, oh, no, you're not there yet. Nope, you don't get to love yourself yet. You don't get to like yourself yet. I don't care what you think about when you're alone. We're going to determine your worth. And I got diagnosed with ADHD at about the same time. So I got put on Ritalin, which was just sort of another moment in time where I had an authority figure, a doctor who was saying, here's something else about you that doesn't work properly. Here's something else about you. This is about between 10 and 12, about right the time when I started middle school. Here's something else you didn't know isn't okay about you. Good thing we figured it out, because the world doesn't want to see this. They don't want to be aware that you have this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and offer you the solution you didn't know about, and it's a pill. And all you got to do is take this pill, and no one will ever know that you have this problem, that there's something not right about you. Again, not what was said to me by the doctor or my parents, what I heard as already an insecure child who didn't understand how to properly love himself, didn't understand that it's okay to not meet the standards of other people, and that they're not the litmus test of whether you are enough. And it really created this understanding for me, or this belief in me, that I was always going to have to try and figure out everything that wasn't okay with me. I was always going to have to be very, very specific and aware of what other people were doing, thinking, and saying in order to determine what I had to fix or correct or outcompete about my body and myself. From a very young age, I was very aware that I was in an adversarial relationship with my body. My body was an enemy that was doing things that weren't good enough, and I had to figure out how to outcompete this body so that I could believe myself worthy of acceptance, and so other people would want to be around me. That's the way I viewed it. My body was something I didn't want to be a part of. It didn't show up for me the way that I wanted it, and it was doing wrong for me, and I had to outcompete this enemy. And we moved to Austin, Texas from Houston right before I started high school. So now I'm already an awkward kid as a freshman. I mean, yeah, freshmen are all pretty much awkward, but I was that awkward freshman. And I didn't know anyone. It was a very big high school in Austin, Texas. And my prescription for Ritalin had been changed to Adderall. So I didn't have any friends. I wasn't, I certainly wasn't going to be the popular kid just from looking at me. But what I did have was a prescription to Adderall. And that was sort of like a key that unlocked a door to let me in to the social groups, because all of a sudden I had something that other people wanted that they couldn't get unless I was around them. And so this was it. This was my in. And at the time, I had never used Ritalin as a recreational drug. I didn't know it could be used as a recreational drug. But I'm going to tell you, man, when I did use it as a recreational drug for the first time as a freshman at a party, it was like, boom, everything, everything that was wrong, that I believed was broken or wrong about me, was fixable for sure. It was just this unbelievable solution. I felt for the first time more confidence in my life than I'd ever felt before. It was just like I had energy that I couldn't explain. I had unbelievable confidence to just go up to people, start talking to them, and without any effort, whatever they were talking about was immediately interesting. And I could be engaged in what they were talking about, and I could be interesting to them. And I was the life of the party because my energy was through the roof. So I could go 100% for the entire party. It seemed to magically fix all of the things that I believe were broken about me. Adderall is an amphetamine. Okay, for those of you who don't know this, Adderall is a medically pure amphetamine. That's what the stuff is. And so I was a little bit overweight in high school. I had been most of my life. Guess what? This is an amazing solution, because when you're on amphetamines, not only does your hunger drive diminish, your metabolism increases. So I'm able to fix this broken body that had always been my enemy. It was like a secret weapon. It was like, oh, you think you've been winning this battle? Look what I just found. It was like unlocking the secret gun in Contra or something. It was like, I've got this figured out. I had really terrible study habits in high school
Quick
because for
question
the most
about your partying. Were you just doing Adderall, or were you also drinking and doing other drugs at the
oh
same time?
yeah, I was smoking weed and I was drinking, and the thing is like I was doing it to be, I was the cliche. I did it to look cool.
Mm-hmm.
I did it because I didn't think who I was without it was enough to be acceptable, that other people would want to be my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to fit in. And Adderall seemed to, like, what it did for me was more so what I was connected to than any kind of chemical hook,
Yeah.
right? It just seemed to, with the unbelievable ease and repeatability, be able to fix everything I'd ever felt was broken about me, right? It required so little of me.
And were
And
you sharing your Adderall with other kids, and were other kids on Adderall?
I was sharing it with some of my close friends at the party. Yeah, not everybody, but and no, they, I don't know if they were or they weren't, but it was definitely how I got in. It
Yeah.
was like it was my way of becoming valuable
Yeah.
to other people, and it worked. Man,
Yeah.
it worked, because everything that was a struggle was resolved, right? The weight came off. I made friends. I had girlfriends. My study habits, which were a struggle between my dad and I, man, if I'm on enough Adderall, I can study like a champ. So my dad and I's relationship gets better. I start to look like the person I thought I needed to look like to start to love myself. And so, why in the world would I ever want to stop doing this? I mean, I got a scholarship to the college I wanted to go to. And when you're in those moments, when you first discover how effective a substance like Adderall can be for a person in my situation, it's very hard to step outside of yourself and go, this is the story that every person who ends up struggling begins with. You feel so successful that you just spin this story that says, it's never going to get out of hand. It's so in my control right now. I know when I'm taking it, how much I'm taking it. I'm not out there buying extra. I'm not out there scamming people. I've got this, and it's always going to be this way. And why would I couldn't assume beyond that, other than to say the greatest solution I'd ever found in my life is actually the biggest problem I'll ever end up facing. Like, that is too much to even suggest to yourself when for the first time you feel complete.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Veg Nutrition. Live better. So, I'm actually a veg elite athlete, and before I joined the team, I spent months doing my due diligence to make sure that the company was vision, mission, and value aligned with me, my values, my mission, my vision, and my lifestyle. I got to know the owners super well. I even got to know the person who formulates all the products, and they passed with flying colors. So I couldn't be more excited to represent a company that I feel so aligned with. And I want to tell you about two of my favorite products. The first is the veg pre workout. So when I first went vegan, or mostly vegan, the last thing for me to go fully vegan was finding a vegan pre workout that gave me the focus, the energy, and the power that I was looking for. And I can tell you, this is the best pre workout that I've ever had. It gives me incredible focus and energy. And what's probably the best is it leaves me with no crash after I take it, which is great. And the flavors are so freaking good. There's literally peach mango and a Patriot Pop that tastes like, the firecracker popsicles, cherry lemon lime flavor. They're literally so good that I can dry scoop them. And they just released a watermelon flavor for just in time for summer, and it's incredible. So that's the first product. The second product is arguably also my favorite, and that's the plant protein. Comes in three incredible flavors: chocolate peanut butter, vanilla ice cream, and cold brew coffee. Yep, you heard me. Cold brew coffee flavor. It tastes incredible, all three flavors, 25 grams of protein, fully organic, incredible ingredients, heavy metal tested, and it is my go-to post workout. Make sure that I'm recovering and refueling and giving my muscles the protein that they need to rebuild for that next workout. So go to vegnutrition.com/dragon and try their full line of supplements, and you'll get 15% off. Or you can just use Dragon at checkout and you'll get 15% off. So that's vegnutrition.com/dragon to get 15% off. Veg Nutrition, live better. Did you ever tell yourself that you could stop anytime you wanted?
All the time, man. All the time. I could say that out loud. It was the other thing I couldn't say out loud, which was I can't not take it, right? Which is, I think if you're ever going to use a double negative, addiction is the place to use it. It's that an individual who's struggling with substance abuse can't not stop doing what they know is harming their life and their health and what matters most to them.
Yeah.
And in college, it really took a turn because my tolerance just kept going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And more became not enough. Not enough became the biggest problem in my life. How much do I have left? How long will it last? Where will I get more? How much will it cost? The whole thing. And I ended up dropping out of college so that I could move back to Austin because in Austin, I knew the dealers I could buy from. I knew the doctors that I could scam. My whole life had become entirely focused on substance use. Just where am I going to get it? How can I use it? I just need it now. And I started to engage in criminal behavior where I was selling and buying and selling on the street. I was scamming people. I was scamming doctors. I was forging prescriptions. These are really, these are felonies. And I began to isolate and treat my family like, just treat them like garbage on a consistent basis, because everything that was a struggle had to be a result of something outside of myself. Because if I accepted that it was me, then I had to accept it as the substance for creating the problem, right? And I became very depressed and isolated. and developed a secondary compulsion to consuming fast food because I was doing so much amphetamines that I would get enough for about 6 days. And then I'd need about 2 weeks so I could get some more. And in those 2 weeks, I found that fast food was an amazing way for me to just check out. One thing is that when I would do Adderall, the average prescription for someone is about 10 milligrams per 24 hours. And I was doing a minimum of 450 milligrams every 24 hours for 6 days straight. And when you do that much, your metabolism is through the roof. You don't sleep, you don't eat. And I would do that for about 6 days straight. And by the time I was off of it, I would pop opiates in order to fall asleep and get myself to stop. My hunger drive would just go through the roof because I hadn't eaten, I hadn't slept, my body was a wreck. And it was like, we need calories. And not only did fast food serve that need, but it also served that dopamine hit that I was missing, that I needed, because most of my life felt so unsuccessful, right? I had become so disconnected from basically every meaningful bond in life that gives us the experience of being alive in a meaningful way. And using and doing behaviors like drugs and fast food that gives us enough of that dopamine, which is a specific and unique kind of pleasure chemical because it's a reward pleasure chemical. There are other chemicals that are produced in the body that give us the experience, that excited euphoria that we call pleasure. But dopamine is unique in the fact that it is a reward pleasure chemical. And that reward is the idea that we are rewarding our body for doing something that it believes is biologically increasing our likelihood of success, meaning that we've just done something to favor our survival. And drugs and fast food, they hijack the system, which give us an unbelievably high amount of dopamine for very little effort. And it's very hard for the body not to perceive this as the most beneficial thing to do anytime you have the opportunity to do it. So fast food served two purposes for me. One, it was serving an intense biological need for calories, and it was serving an intense need for dopamine because I could not get it from any meaningful connection in my life. And my life just spiraled out of control. And by the time, I think it was 2010, I had reached about 350 pounds. I was consuming about 5 to 10,000 calories of fast food regularly. I was consuming 450 milligrams of Adderall regularly. I was popping opiates regularly. I was broke, in debt. And by 2012, I was weeks away from being out on the street. And, at this point in my life, living hurt in every possible way, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Life was not something I wanted to be a part of, not in any sort of authentic fashion. And I had been practicing self-harm. I would beat myself regularly. I would say awful things about myself because I had this goal that if I could just hate myself enough, and if I could just hate my life enough, maybe I could make myself so goddamn miserable that I would actually want to change things. That was the belief. And it's a belief that I had learned from the traditional narrative that, like, what rock bottom is, right? Rock bottom is this awful place you don't want to be a part of because it's when your life becomes so miserable that you can't take it anymore, and that's why you change. And the problem is that every time I would engage in behaviors in the attempt of hating myself more, it just confirmed this belief that everything in my life was the worst it had ever been, and it wasn't bad enough to change, and tomorrow would more than likely be worse. And when you're stuck in that cycle of belief of how awful your life is, how awful you are, eventually tomorrow is not something you want to be a part of. And so on August 21st of 2012, I had been struggling with suicidal thoughts for probably 6 months at this time, but I didn't have a plan. I didn't write a note. It wasn't something that was, and I can't really explain it properly, but this moment arose when I was, here I was 30 years old. I already had erectile dysfunction. I had infected cuts on my legs from scratching mosquito bites that I didn't understand why they wouldn't heal at the time. And I just decided, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I can't figure it out. I don't understand what happened. I don't know how I got here. It wasn't a plan. It was just this unbelievably subtle and imperceptible shift over time. And all of a sudden I woke up and I'm so far gone, and I'm so deep in this fog of addiction and pain that it's so thick. The fog is so thick that I can't see my way out of it. I can't understand it. I can't make sense of it. I didn't know that it was okay to feel like this. I didn't know that it was okay not to know how to get out of it on my own. I didn't know that it was okay to tell people I don't know what's going on and I'm scared. I didn't know these things. And so I decided, without even thinking about it, I just grabbed a handful of pills and threw them down my throat. And I tried to end my life by overdose. And, I've been battling extreme substance abuse for 10 years at this point. And so being on the verge of overdose was not something I was, it wasn't something I was new experiencing for the first time. But this felt distinctly different. And I tried to stand up, and it felt like I got stabbed on the right side with like a hot knife. And my whole right side of my body cramped. And as I buckled over, I see black starting to fade in, and I have this very profound moment where I fully believe that I'm about to experience my last moments on earth alive. And the feeling, and I don't mean the physical feeling, I mean like the feeling that I was about to leave this world completely alone. Not because people who mattered to me and didn't want to be there for me, but because I had done everything I could to make sure they wouldn't be there and couldn't be there. Completely disconnected from everything that has ever mattered to me, disconnected from myself, physically, emotionally, from people that I share value with, from a purpose, from the natural world, and from any kind of future that makes sense. Everything that made life meaningful, I was completely disconnected from. And I was alone in a dark, hoarder-like apartment. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. And I wake up a few hours later in a puddle of vomit in a pile of fast food garbage, surrounded by empty pill bottles. And I find myself struggling to stand up, and then I feel this unbelievable feeling of relief. When I finally realized what had happened, I was overcome by this immense relief that confused me at first, because here I was thinking that life was something I just so desperately didn't want to be a part of. Why would I be so glad to still be here? And what it was asking me to accept was that there must be something about myself and my life that I love enough that even though it was certain that today was going to be painful as the day before, maybe even more, I still wanted to be a part of it all for at least one more day. And what that asked me to accept is the truth of suicide. We've been told this story that suicide is people trying to end their life, but suicide is people trying to end their pain. And so I decided I was not going to waste this chance that I've been given. And I called my family and I asked for help. I checked into rehab, where within 72 hours, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, erectile dysfunction, bipolar disorder, suicidal depression, anxiety disorder, sleep disorder, attention deficit disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And it wrecked me. Again, I was a walking cliche. Look, here's the truth of it. I left my apartment after overdosing, and I had to use in order to leave. I had to use in order to get in the doors of rehab. I was so far removed from the ability to show up and be present because my life had become so painful that I couldn't do life without using. And I fully walked into rehab saying, I'm going to do 28 days away from my substance and then go back and I'm going to have a handle on it. For the first time, I'm going to get a break. I'm just going to reset my tolerance. The whole stupid story that so many people spin for themselves. And I understand it. But now I had been presented with the reality that sobriety, meaning not using, was not going to be even close to enough to save my life. That if I wasn't willing to change everything about the way that I moved through the world, I wasn't guaranteed 5 more years. I mean, my blood pressure was like 210 over 130. My resting heart rate was 120. I mean, they were so afraid I was going to have a heart attack. I had to have my vitals checked every morning and night. every night, every morning before I went to breakfast and every night before I went to dinner. And thankfully, about a year before that, I had the opportunity to attend an event hosted by Rip Esselstyn, who is the executive producer of the film The Game Changers. He's the author of the Engine 2 Diet. And I heard him and people like Dr. Michael Clapper, Jeff Novick, Chef AJ, Doug Lyle, Jane and Ann Esselstyn, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. I heard these amazing doctors and thought leaders and evolutionary psychologists talk about plant-based nutrition. And I had a doctor in front of me who was saying,
This is a year before your suicide attempt?
The year before.
Okay.
Yeah. And see, most people would say like, oh, you went to this event, you heard this amazing information. Why wouldn't you change your life then? And you have to understand that I just simply wasn't ready to give up what was allowing me to escape a life that was too painful a place to be. Because when we talk about addiction at its core is about not wanting to be present in your life because your life, for one or many reasons, has become too painful a place to be. And I had this doctor in front of me in rehab in the doctor's office telling me that I am diabetic, I have heart disease, I am all these things, and that I will for life. I'm going to be on all these medications. And it was like I was immediately transported back to this event with Rip and this team where they were telling me a completely different story that said, no, listen. The reason why you are experiencing these things is because that is a very reasonable and predictable response to how you have been living your life. This isn't a body that's sick. This is a healthy body with a reasonable response to choices that are an abnormal way of living. And simply making a shift in how you move, how you think, and how you fuel yourself with food, you should have another predictable and reasonable response, which is reversal of this condition. And I decided that that was the truth that I was going to buy into, because I didn't understand addiction at the time. I didn't understand, the psychological mental health, struggle I was facing. But when it came to nutrition and movement, for me, it was just an equation of A plus B equals C. I change what I eat, I change how I move, I get C result. And so I made that the foundation of my recovery. I moved into a sober living facility where I would spend the next 10 months. And in sober living is when I adopted a plant-based diet. And as a result of doing so, within 4 months, I completely reversed my diabetes, my heart disease, and my erectile dysfunction. Within 10 months, I lost over 100 pounds. And within 1 year, I was off of every single medication I was put on in rehab. The antidepressants, the mood stabilizers, the sleeping medications, the anxiety medications, the ADHD medications, everything. And it was this unbelievable vehicle. It's what I like to tell people that food was for me. It was a vehicle that helped me reconnect to what it meant to show up and be a part of life in a meaningful way, to show up authentically. See, I don't know when this happened, but I do remember the moment when I was sitting in sober living in my bedroom. And I'll be like, all honesty, like my first few weeks were rough. It comes across as like this sort of magical story of like, there was never a struggle. I adopted a plant-based diet or blah, blah, blah. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. I struggled every single day with a lot of different things in a very good way. And one of the things that I struggled with and then came to understand was that when I first went into it, I was still under the mindset that my body was my enemy. It was my adversary. I was trying to outcompete it every day by restricting calories from meat, eggs, and dairy, by removing calories through movement as punishment, right? And I had this really interesting moment when I was doing my morning meditation, when I considered what had taken place as a result of surviving my suicide. And if ever there was an example of it, this was it for me. This question arose that said, what if your body isn't your enemy? What if it's been your ally your entire life? What if your body has been fighting for you since day one? Even though you didn't know how to properly serve your body, you were eating junk food as a kid and you had extra weight. The weight was, sure, it was there, but your body was just so desperately wanting for you to understand what a beautiful partnership it wants to be for you and to come into alignment with what it needs so it can serve you best. And here I was 37 days sober, starting sober living. And I reflect on my suicide attempt and I said, man, I literally tried to end my life, and my body said, no, we're not done yet. Our bodies, every single person who's listening to this story right now, I'm telling you, your bodies have been fighting you for you since day one. Your body has never once given up on you, which is why you're still here. What if, instead of trying to outcompete my body, what if I became a loving partnership? What if I made decisions that weren't abstaining or avoiding certain decisions so that I could remove things from my body? What if I made decisions that were in alignment with values and priorities that allowed me to be a caretaker for a body that has never given up on me? What if I make the food that I choose to eat acts of self care, self love, and nurturing in loving partnership with a body that wants the best for me? What this offered me the opportunity to do was to say, I don't have to wait until I lose the weight or until I reverse the disease to start loving my body. I can I can start loving my body right now for the fact that it has never once said you're done. That this is a body that has been taking care of me. It's taking care of me right then, right in that moment. My body is my partner and I love it. Then that really started to help me understand what self-love and loving your body really is. Your body, loving your body is far less loving what it looks like than it is loving and appreciating what it does for you. And when you love and appreciate what it does for you more so than what it looks like, then you make decisions and choices that benefit its ability to continue to do those things for you. And that's what food became for me. It became this unbelievable tool to learn how to love myself more. Without abstinence, I don't believe in abstinence. I think abstinence is a broken method. I think abstinence is a perfection model, right? Abstinence as a method of recovery from substance abuse, as recovery from food, says that success is determined by how long you could perfectly abstain from using specific behaviors that have been deemed unsuccessful or dangerous to you. And the problem with that is humans are imperfect. And we cannot expect ourselves to feel safe as imperfect humans if anything less than perfect is considered a failure. And so for me, if you think about it, right, like you, right, you've never chosen not to do something. And I really want to make this clear. Justin, you have never chosen not to do anything, right? Every decision not to do something is in reality a choice to do something else. Right now, you're sitting down, not because you decided not to stand, but because you chose to sit. The same thing with why you eat plants. You're not choosing not to eat meat, eggs, and dairy. You're choosing to eat foods that are in alignment with your values and priorities for how you want to show up for yourself and your life. And then you fully commit to those values and priorities and use it as a compass for guiding you one way or the other in regards to how you want to live your life. I've lost about 180 pounds as of today. I'm the healthiest, the fittest, the happiest I've ever been. I'm the most connected to those meaningful bonds that I've ever been. And I really believe that for me, plant-based nutrition was the greatest example I've ever found that showed me just how unbroken I've always been. And I know that this is possible for everybody. I'm not that special. I'm simply a person who decided that like I'm done. I'm done with the belief that I'm not enough. I'm done with this belief that there's something wrong with me that I have to outcompete. I'm done with it. I'm ready to start believing that there's more to me that's possible than I've ever imagined. And I decided that I was going to practice or start a journey of self-discovery, of remembering. So I think that addiction recovery, lifestyle recovery, it's not a transformation to a newer, better version of yourself. I think it's a practice in remembering who we've always been before somebody or something else taught us differently and we believed it. That's what I think recovery is really about. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been an unbelievably wild ride.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. This show is brought to you by Feel Free from Botanic Tonics. This product is unlike anything I've ever had before. No joke. It's made with kava root and other ancient plants, and just half a shot gives me this incredible sense of focused flow and productivity. And I love to take just half a shot right before I work out. I take it with my pre-workout, and it takes my workouts to the next level. It is seriously unlike anything I've ever had. It's also an incredible productivity tool for any big work projects that you have, or long periods of time where you just need to be super focused in flow state and get a lot of shit done. So, if you want to give this a shot, you can go to botanictonics.com and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 40% off your first order. No joke. 40% off with code DRAGON. That's feel free from botanictonics.com, code DRAGON. Feel free, feel good. Yeah, normally I interject and talk a whole lot more during these, but I just felt like I needed to get out of your way and let you tell your story because it's so
Appreciate it.
powerful. And when you were talking about, the fact that your body has literally never given up on you and it's always fighting for you, I literally was tearing up and like almost crying because it just hit me so hard to like realize the same is true for me. And really
Yeah.
that's true for everybody listening, or watching this is our bodies never, even when we're sick, even when we're in pain, even when we're on drugs, even when we're eating, terrible food, our body is always, always, always gunning for our life.
Always.
And that just gives me goosebumps, just even admitting that like consciously, out loud. It's so powerful and it's huge. And I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and that somehow didn't hit me until this time. So thank you for sharing that. That's
My
that's
pleasure.
really that's really huge. You mentioned meditation. That came to you during one of your meditations, and I'm just kind of curious when and how you started meditating, because I'm not familiar of meditation being a part of recovery
Yeah.
sobriety institutions, like rehab institutions. My older brother went through a lot of rehab, and I'd never heard of him doing
Yeah.
meditation, so I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So in fact, it's interesting because it wasn't seated meditation like you traditionally think of. When I was in rehab, I worked with this doctor there who helped me practice walking meditations.
Mm,
And walking meditations are really interesting because what they do is they very much connect you with the ability to be very present. By what you do is, I don't know if maybe you have practiced martial arts.
yep.
I know I grew up practicing martial arts, and there's a saying in martial arts called the 1,000 eyes, right? Where you try to have 1,000 eyes looking in different directions. You see as much of your surrounding as possible. You're looking straight forward at your opponent, but you're aware of much of your peripheral as you can be. And so what you're going to do is you're going to pick a point about 10 yards away from you. And you typically want to do this outside. Pick a point about 10 yards away from you. You look at it, but you open your awareness to as much of the periphery as possible. Like what you want to do is you can even put your hand out and you want to see how far to the right and how far to the left you can see, and you open up that awareness. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to open up your audible awareness. Really start to take notice of every noise you can hear. Listen to the wind, the trees, maybe there's some birds, maybe you're near water and you hear water. Then you want to start to take a one step slowly. You want to feel it. You want to feel your foot touch the ground. You want to feel that impact reverberate up your leg. You want to go slowly to the next foot. You're really putting yourself here and now. And the interesting thing is when you do this, as you're walking, you're going to slowly walk those 10 yards. One of the things he asked me to do is he's like, I want you to try and think of something, a negative thought that you've had, that you've consistently had repeating in your head. I want you to try to complete that thought when you're fully present to the moment. Literally couldn't get past the second word because you're just so drawn back to where you are. And I was practicing this meditation and I got so present and so connected to my body that afterwards I started to sit and be present with myself. And that's when that moment arose where I was like, wait a minute, hang on a second. I've been in belief that my body has always been something that's against me, and yet I'm alive after everything I went through. Are you kidding me? There's no way that can be true. There's no way that after 10 years of daily, consistent, repeated abuse of substance and food, and then literally trying to leave this world, and not being successful, my body saying, I don't care what you do, we're not done. I'm not giving up on you. There's no way my body's ever been my ally. I just didn't know it was my partner.
Yeah.
And so that's where it came up. And then that translated into running. Running became a consistent practice of walking meditation, but at a faster pace, right? I became very proficient with walking meditations that when I would go running, I would be in a constant practice of that meditative practice. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. I'm a huge proponent of moving meditation, especially walking, but really all forms, running, any type of endurance sport, even weightlifting. If
I
for
was going to say now for me, it's weightlifting.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share with you, you may have heard me talk about this before, but I think it's really valuable for the audience. Through my own study, I've actually found that moving meditation actually harnesses an inner archetype that all of us have. There's these like human archetypes that are available to really everybody who is alive and human.
Mm-hmm.
And moving meditation actually allows you to tap into the visionary archetype. And the visionary is the one who solves problems, comes up with creative ideas, solutions, etc. So it's really cool that you just shared with me that basically you were using your body
Yeah.
to do a moving meditation to then have the epiphany or the enlightenment that your body has never once given up on you. And
Yeah.
that is just such a beautiful, like, full circle. That's
Yeah.
so awesome. I really thank you for walking me through that. That was really powerful and really
My
helped
pleasure.
me kind of connect more things in my own well-being journey. So very amazing. So basically, we've covered kind of your journey to sobriety, plant-based living, healing your relationship with your body. I think you mentioned you've lost 180 pounds at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
you look great. You're glowing.
Thank
I
you.
mean, anyone who follows Adam on Instagram and other social media, he's just a beam of brilliant light and
Man,
energy
thank you.
every single day. And even when he's having his tough days, he mines them for the silver lining and shares that with us too. So I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, what you do week to week, day to day,
Yeah.
and I want to touch on the infinite study that you're doing. So could you walk us through,
Yeah.
what does Adam do for work now? Like, what are you doing,
Yeah.
and what are your big projects that you're working on?
So I am a part of a group called Mastering Diabetes. Mastering Diabetes is a program that was founded by my two very, very close friends, Robbie Barbero and Dr. Cyrus Kambata, who are both type 1 diabetics. And what we do is we help people reverse insulin resistance through the use of low-fat, plant-based whole food nutrition. And what we love to use Robbie and Cyrus as an example, because typically when people think of type 1 diabetes, they think, oh, I can understand as a type 2 diabetic, you can have some carbohydrate, but no way can you eat a high carbohydrate diet on as a type 1 diabetic. And it's just fundamentally untrue. So Robbie and Cyrus are both type 1 diabetics who consume between 500 and 700 grams of carbohydrate per day, have not only the A1C of a non-diabetic, which is shockingly amazing to have an A1C under 5.7 as a type 1 diabetic, but they also each inject a physiological, healthy amount of insulin. So within the type 1 diabetes world, there's this belief that success is determined by who can use the least insulin, right? The competition to the bottom, right? Who can use the least insulin? This is why the ketogenic diet likes to say, oh, we win. We use 10 units of insulin. He's using 25 units of insulin. Clearly, ours is better. But what you have to look at is what's known as your carbohydrate to insulin ratio, right? Are you injecting a physiological healthy amount of insulin? So like Justin, you and I, our bodies, our pancreas produce insulin. And today, you and I will basically produce somewhere between 20 and 40 units of insulin. And that's fine. That's a healthy amount of insulin. And so there's no reason not to inject between 20 and 40 units of insulin. The goal is how much carbohydrate can you consume while injecting a physiological healthy amount of insulin? In order to inject about 20 units of insulin, a person on a carbohydrate diet has what's called a 1-to-1 or up to a 5-to-1 carbohydrate to insulin ratio, meaning that for every 1 unit of insulin, they can consume between 1 and 5 grams of carbohydrate. All right. This shows how effective and how sensitive their body is to insulin. For every 1 unit of insulin, they can eat up to 5 grams of carbohydrate. Robbie and Cyrus and people who go through our program end up with a ratio between 25 and 50-to-1, meaning that for every 1 unit of insulin, they can consume between 25 and 50 grams of carbohydrate, which is textbook representation that their body is far more sensitive to insulin, because not only are they achieving a low A1C, they're injecting a physiological healthy amount of insulin, they're also consuming a high carbohydrate diet. And diabetes of any form, insulin resistance, is the body's inability to metabolize carbohydrate. So unless you can demonstrate that your body can effectively metabolize carbohydrate while achieving the low A1C, you can't claim to have reverse diabetes. You just can't. Can't be done. So I do that on a regular basis. I also run a small group coaching program of my own called the Positive Change Project that helps people make positive lifestyle changes and connect those habits to meaningful bonds in life that give them the experience of being alive in a meaningful way that creates sustainability. And then I'm the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Plant-Based for Positive Change. And we are right now leading the Infinite study, which you mentioned. And the Infinite study is the very first controlled trial to investigate the effects of any nutrition at all. First nutrition study ever. First controlled trial investigating the effects of nutrition on early addiction recovery outcomes. What I found shocking after 4 years of being sober and realizing the profound impact that food had on my ability to recover, not just from health, but from substance abuse and reconnect to meaningful life. I found it very shocking that there's never been a single controlled trial to investigate any diet on early addiction recovery. And so that's what this study is doing. And so our control diet is the diet that's being served at the treatment center in Austin, Texas, called Infinite Recovery, which is why the study is called the Infinite Study. And then the treatment diet is a whole food plant-based diet. And then what we do is we give people the opportunity to decide they want to be in the study. And then they are placed into either one or the other group, either the plant-based diet or the control diet. And then we observe various outcomes, everything from full lipid panel, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is a measurement for inflammation, various vitamin levels, plus a full microbiome study. So we're getting an understanding of what changes occur within the gut and how it relates to your physical health. And then we take both of those factors and we relate it to validated scales of measuring a full spectrum of psychological and emotional health outcomes. Because this is an early addiction recovery study, these are people within treatment centers. We are not looking at sobriety as an outcome. What we are looking at is how food impacts the mediating factors that contribute to a stronger foundation for recovery. Things like depression, anxiety, resilience, spiritual healing, self-compassion, obsessive compulsive drug use, mania, eating disorder scales. How do we strengthen an individual's mental health state in recovery so that it creates a foundation that's much stronger for them to recover upon? Because I just call complete bullshit on the idea that drugs are the cause of drug addiction. So I don't want to measure sobriety as the outcome. I know from my experience and what we are witnessing in real world observation, what substance abuse really is at its core is about not wanting to be present in your life because your life has become too painful a place to be. We're being told a story for far too long that drug addiction is caused solely by the chemical hooks in drugs. That once you use drugs, if you just happen to have a genetic, if you're a drug addict, you're born with a gene, there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to be addicted to drugs. Your problem is heroin. So let's get you to abstain from heroin long enough, get you to admit that you are an addict. That's what you are. And your problem is heroin. And then do your best to abstain from heroin use for the rest of your life. Then we'll call it success. That's the traditional recovery model. And here's the problem. The traditional recovery model has a recidivism rate of 70%, meaning that 70% of people who check into treatment today will be back in treatment within 1 year. Now let's look at the real world observations.
So literally only 30% don't come back within 1 year.
Only 30% don't come back within 1 year. Yeah. Let's look at the real world observations of what we're seeing happen with substance abuse. Okay, what we're seeing happen through various studies that have been conducted on the effects of addiction recovery. There's a famous one by Professor Bruce Alexander in the 1970s. It's called Rat Park. Okay, Rat Park study is phenomenal because they took the traditional model of understanding addiction, which is you put a rat in a cage, you give it food and drugs. And once this rat discovers the drugs, it will continue to use the drugs for about 10 to 12 days consecutively, and then it's going to die. And they say, there you go. Once the rat used the drugs, he couldn't stop using the drugs. Therefore, the drugs are the cause of drug addiction. And Professor Bruce Alexander said, hang on a second. You put a rat in an empty cage. His only choices are to eat food or do drugs. This isn't the real world. This isn't anybody's experience. This certainly isn't a rat's experience in life. So what he did was he created something called Rat Park, which is essentially heaven for rats. So there's loads of things you can play around with, loads of food, and more importantly, there's other rats. And he created a very fulfilling, very meaningful experience within this rat park. It's basically like you can eat lots of food, they can play on things, have loads of sex, do all the things that rats do. They're meaningful in the experience of being a rat. And they put drugs in Rat Park. They just put the drugs in Rat Park. What they found in Rat Park is that none of the rats ever overdosed. None of them ever used the drugs compulsively. Most of them don't even like it. So is the truth of addiction that addiction is an adaptation to the chemical hooks, or is it an adaptation to an individual's cage? Is it the environment and the world that they have created for themselves or found themselves in that is the biggest contributing factor to substance abuse? When we look at other things that have happened in the world, look what happened in Europe. What happened was they had a horrible heroin problem. There were about 1% of the population was struggling with heroin. They're having massive overdoses. This is our big problem, to have 1% of the population addicted to heroin. And the Prime Minister of Health came out and said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to legalize heroin use for heroin addicts. And the rest of the country said, you can't do this. This is chaos. This is absurd. You're going to have people dying all over the place. And her response was, no, what chaos is unknown people using unknown substances of unknown potency and unknown origin, purchasing them from unknown criminals using unknown criminal elements. That's chaos. What we're going to do is we're going to know who's using, what they're using, the potency of it, where it came from, that they're safe, and that they know they're cared for. The number of overdoses from heroin since is zero. What this demonstrates is that more so than anything, people just want to know that they're cared for and they have not been forgotten by the community around them. They want people to know that when things are hard, they will not be stigmatized for the only means they've ever known to escape that pain. I truly believe that people are always doing the best they can with what they know and what they have access to. And yet we blame people for discovering something that with unbelievable ease removes some of the most incredible pain they've ever experienced. We call them a criminal, we shame them for their use, and then we expect them to get better. And it just doesn't work. The war on drugs is such an abysmal failure that we can't even keep the drugs out of prison. This is a joke and it's got to end. And what I'm hoping that the Infinite study is going to do is we have this, imagine that there's a puzzle for the addiction recovery problem or the addiction problem. And there's some pieces that are missing. Food is one of the most controlled variables in addiction recovery, especially within a treatment center. We know that when people enter into a treatment center, they're not only fed the same time as everyone else, they're fed the same thing as everyone else. And we've never investigated its effect. So what we're hoping is we're going to be bringing a piece to the puzzle that says we now know that there is an optimal way to feed somebody that helps them recover faster. We now know that there's a way that we can say we care about you. We care about you so much that we've investigated a way for you to feed yourself that will better favor your long-term outcome. And we've been working on this study now for over 12 months. We finished the participant part of it. We have an unbelievable team. The medical doctors are Doctors Dean and Aisha Sherzai, who are the world's leading neuroscientists on cognitive longevity. They've written the 2 books, The Alzheimer's Solution and the 30-Day Alzheimer's Solution Cookbook. Tara Kemp is my lead investigator, who did a live with you, and she's another amazing advocate for self-love and food. Dr. Frank Cusimano is our microbiome specialist, and what we are seeing, I can't give you specifics, what we are seeing is that the plant-based group is outperforming the control group in every measurable outcome. And I'm not saying that food is the answer to substance abuse. I'm saying it's an unknown variable that will now be known. We will know that there is a way to feed people that better favors creating the proper neural pathways for strengthening the beginning stages of early addiction recovery. We are saying more so than anything, it's less about the drugs and more about the human. Let's treat the human.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Fit Rich Vegan. If you're ready to get in the best shape of your life, double your income, and 10x your savings and investments, then this is the coaching program for you. But wait a minute, Dragon. Isn't this your coaching program? Heck yeah, it is. I spent the last 8 years mastering my fitness and my finances, and I've built an incredible coaching program with an incredible team to help you get the body of your dreams and finally achieve that level of financial success that you've been seeking. So if you want to find out if you're a good fit for the program, go to fitrichvegan.com and book your free consultation today. Or you can just DM me on Instagram with the words Fit Rich Vegan, and we can chat about if it's going to be a good fit for you. I'm committed to empowering people to actually achieve their fitness and financial goals. I spent the last 20 years trying to figure this out on my own. And what I realized is the key to doing it is not doing it alone. You have to have coaches, you have to have mentors, and you have to be a part of masterminds. And that's exactly what Fit Rich Vegan has. It has coaches, mentors, and it is a mastermind. So again, if you're ready to book your free consultation today, go to fitrichvegan.com or drop me a DM on Instagram. That's awesome. I'm so excited for that study to, complete and be published.
Me too.
I think this is a pretty good place to start to wrap this up. So I just kind of have like one or two last follow-up questions before, we land this plane. So for someone who is looking to cultivate, more self-love in their life, because especially for men, for all people, but I think even more so for men, even talking about self-love is weird. So I'm curious, in your view, like where or what are some good ways for someone who's interested in exploring self-love?
There's actually a lot of good books out there. Two books I highly recommend every human reading. Number one, Lost Connections by a British journalist named Johan Hari, who the book is exploring the true causes of depression and anxiety and the surprising solutions. It's phenomenal. It's the best book on mental health I've ever read. And then there's some amazing self-compassion workbooks out there. There's one called Mindful Self-Compassion by a researcher named Kristen Neff. That's phenomenal. And look, when it comes to self-love, we have a culture that has unfortunately raised a lot of men to believe that you got to man up, right? You got to toughen it up, right? That feelings are weakness, anxiety, fear, that these are indications of failure. Sadness is an indication of failure. Anger is an indication of failure. Joy, excitement, love, pleasure, these are indications of success. And men are taught this a lot more than women, in my opinion, from what I see. Women, I think, are just unbelievable creatures. If you just observe them, maybe we'd learn more about ourselves. But we're taught that one half of the breadth of human emotion is an indication of failure, and the other half is an indication of success. And feelings aren't right or wrong. They're signals. They are signals that are telling us that something significant is happening right now in this moment, or something is reminding us of something significant that happened to us, and that our bodies want us to be aware of what is happening so that it can guide us towards a better way of showing up or learning from the past. Okay? They're not right or wrong. They just are. We don't feel because we're broken. We feel because we're human and we're whole. And because we're human, it doesn't matter if you're a man, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, it doesn't matter if you're masculine, feminine, however you want to identify. You feel because you're human. Men and women, however you identify, experience a breadth of human emotion equally, because we are all humans who feel. That's what we do. At the end of the day, one thing I know that I've had in common with every single human on the planet is we've all felt deeply. And when we judge ourselves and try to insult and remove the experience of one half of the breadth of human emotion, we miss out on some of what is best about being alive. And so I think that if we can just start to break that stupid story down that says that we need to avoid this half, the quote unquote negative half, and spend as much time as possible in the positive half, then we win. And it's a bullshit story. And so if for guys out there, if you're really interested, my course, the Positive Change Project, is really geared towards helping men reconnect with the self-love aspect and creating those bonds in life that give us that experience of being alive in a meaningful way. So check out my Instagram at Plant-Based Addict. My next course is, I'm always getting ready to launch a new 6-week course. So watch out and see if I start advertising for it, or just send me a DM and let me know.
Awesome. Cool. I think that's an amazing place to end. My last question was like, where's the best place to find you online? But it sounds like it's an Instagram, Plant-Based Addict.
Instagram.
Yep. Okay, great. And obviously, I could talk to you for hours. So, we'll do a part 2 to this another time.
For sure.
The study completes and you get that book published.
That's right.
So really excited for future conversations and deeply grateful for you just sharing wide open heart, like just getting into the emotions, not being afraid to, share your experience in a really authentic and powerful way. I was moved by it. I know the audience is going to be moved by it. So thank you so much, Adam. I really appreciate you, brother.
My pleasure. And I'll just leave people with one thing. One of my dear friends, his name was David Clark. And David Clark was a vegan ultra runner who was formerly a 300+ pound alcoholic. And one of the things he said that I've never forgotten, he died, unfortunately, a little over a year ago as a complications to surgery. What he said was, we've all heard the story that if you want to be happy, you've got to live like it's the last day of your life. David says that the real way to be happy is to treat everyone else like they were living the last day of theirs. And so every time I have the opportunity to share that, I do, because I will never forget that.
That's amazing. What a wonderful way to end this show. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, literally everything can be used as an opportunity to learn, to heal, to grow, and to transform. So whatever is going on in your life, choose to consciously and proactively harness that energy and use it to alchemize your life to the next level. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or on your favorite social media and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. As always, you can find me at Justin David Carl on Instagram and all the socials, as well as at alchemizelife.com on the web. Until the next time, sending you lots of energy and plenty of dragon magic.